Afternoon, all. I want to call the Farmers Branch City Council study session to order. The time is 4 p.m. The date is Tuesday, April the 4th, 2023. First item on the agenda is discuss regular agenda items, A1. Anybody have any questions about tonight's agenda, or if they need more clarification or explanation?
I had none at this time.
I do, Mayor, thank you. On agenda item, the consent agenda, H2, the contract with Wheelhouse. Just a question, how was the vendor, how was this contractor selected?
Find out from,
Hi, my name is Rachel Johnson, I'm the marketing manager. We learned of Wheelhouse Innovations through a relationship with TNP, who's the engineering firm working on a lot of our projects. They put us in touch with them on a project, or on Hoya, to do the fabrication and design of a really cool sign. And we learned that they are also a full house, or full service marketing agency, and PR agency, actually. So they have design and creative and digital marketing capabilities. And we also had them work on the logo and brand for Hoya. And we were very pleased with that in the process and the price range. And so with the event center coming up, they seemed like a good fit. They work on a lot of luxury brands. And so that's kind of the space we're probably moving into, or the look and feel that we're gonna be looking at. And so they also have experience with event spaces, and their CEO was formerly she booked events for Bass Hall in Fort Worth. So they have the capability and the experience, and so that's why they were selected.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Rachel.
Is that it?
Want to make sure. The item J2. The meeting for May 11th is going to be at the Providence Tower on the 5th floor. Just want to make sure we have some signage down in the parking garage. I've worked in that building for a while. It's a little confusing down there, so I just want to make sure our residents can find us easily and get to where they need to be.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Shrupa, Deputy Director of Planning. That has been discussed with both the representative from the Office Tower as well as our staff here. They also have security officers that regularly guide people to and out of the building, because the access off of Spring Valley is not very easy to get to the basement garage.
Right.
But we are going to be posting signage as well as additional directional maps and things will be posted on the website, as well as provided to the building staff on the
Okay.
ground floor.
Good.
And we'll kind of hand deliver and reach out through economic development, the business community and the residents community on the east side. So that was one of the targeted focus, to reach out to that group, because they had approached us. And it's a really beautiful facility. We went and looked at it, so it's in a great position. We just have to make sure people can get to it, and we're actively working on it.
Right, yeah, it's a little confusing getting into that building from other places other than the front door. So, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Tina, you have anything?
Nope, we covered everything in our meetings.
Okay. Michael, how about yourself?
I had the same question on H2 that Councilman Jackson had, so I'm all good.
Okay, good.
yes, I have a question. So on H2, I received an email from a resident. Rachel, can you just confirm that the firm that we're hiring is going to do more than simply selecting a name for the event center?
Well, the naming process actually happens through the Historical Park Board and City Council. They will help advise us on kind of technicalities around the name, like should there be a the or an S, or how can we position it the best way for people not to be confused, or sometimes when you add something like event center to the end of a name, it gets lost eventually and you just become the name. It's that kind of thing that they'll help with on the naming. They'll also be creating the actual logo, a submark, and
I believe when I was reading reading the description of the scope of what they're going to be doing, they're also going to be putting together brochures and
Yes.
at websites and things like that for use for
Oh, yes.
people to track people to the event center.
Yes, so once we establish the brand and the look and the the typography and the colors, they will work on a website for us that's, really clean and looks great on a mobile device. And then we'll go further and create the rental brochures, so the information that can be handed out at trade shows or bridal events, whatever we choose to be, wherever we're marketing at, yeah. So it's a full package.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I do have other questions, but I think we can wait for those items to come up. So I'm good for now.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Seeing that, okay, let's move on to item A2 is receive a biannual update from the Historic Preservation Restoration Board.
Good afternoon. My name is Missy Dewars. I'm the chairperson of the Historical Preservation and Restoration Board. Thank you for having us. I'm going to give you the biannual update. As always, our mission statement has not changed. It's to collect, preserve, interpret, and celebrate the history of the United States and Texas with an emphasis on Peters Colony and Farmers Branch. Our mission statement has not changed. Our vision is to provide visitors with high-quality programs, exhibits, and events throughout the living history experience and mission-based education with a goal of becoming a fully accredited museum that offers programming which will link our past to our future. Our meetings and participation. Our meetings are held the fourth Thursday of every month. We welcome any individual to come and attend our meeting. Our board member participation is over 80%. We really encourage our board members to get involved with activities that are going on in the park. We just had our Easter egg, our second annual adult Easter egg hunt, and it was very successful. Unfortunately, it's one of the programs I really enjoy. I was out of town for that event, so I was not able to attend, but we had many of our board members help with different areas around the park during the whole night. It was a great success. Also, a lot of our board members donate and go out and solicit for prizes. So we're all working behind the scenes and helping the staff there. It's a lot of work to put on that, so if we can help, I encourage them to do it. Our board accomplishments, we support the historical park by volunteering at the events and programs. We assist the Friends of the Historical Park with fundraising efforts. We work with the Friends Group to provide speakers and membership meetings. We serve as various committees on the board, liaison, stakeholder advisory committee, with Keene Cemetery Committee, subcommittee, and the Arts and Culture subcommittee. We select the Witness of History Award recipient each year, and that was Sammy Perry. She's a very involved citizen of Farmers Branch. I want to talk a little bit about the Friends and how they're important to our board. Without them, we would not be able to host a lot of our events because they support us. So as we go forward, I hope that we can continue to facilitate new members, because as we all are going through time, so is our board, and we need new members, younger members, to help that organization stay afloat. And so if you guys know of anybody that would like to get involved with our Friends group, I would really love to know, or any suggestions. We're really trying to grow that part of our organization. Our accomplishments at the Historical Park is we offer unique offerings that bring new audiences. We have sold-out events. We had the Mad Hatter Tea sold-out event. We had additional seating times. Multi-award winning programs, which we've received awards for, the Texas Park and Recreation Society, North Region and State winners for Dia de los Muertos celebration, which is the Day of the Dead celebration that we put on. And we have some pictures here of the award and our Mad Hatter Tea. As you all know, we have the Event Center update. We have our city managers breaking ground. We have our current board also breaking down, but I want to express the gratitude that we all have, our current board, for the past boards, because this has been going on for a long time and they have worked really hard just as we have. So I don't want to leave them out because this has been going on for 10, 20 years. So we really appreciate them and we really want to recognize their efforts as well. Whoops. Our upcoming activities, we have the Security Board class, we have Mums and Sons, Tasty Times Out, which is the Mother's Day cookies. We have Cub Scout Camp Out, Teen Camp, Kids in the Kitchen, Independence Day celebration, Girls Make History Camp, lawn games, Chalk in the Park, and Come Fly a Kite, and many more coming. That concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Council members have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So you mentioned wanting to get more younger people involved in the Friends of the Historical Park. Do you guys have a Facebook page?
We do. And we also have a new member on our board that is involved in the PTOs in the school, one of the schools. So we have suggested to the Friends group to do some advertising to the, even going and do a presentation at the PTO board meetings and getting the young moms involved. So, and we're going to make a brochure to hand out. And so, yes, we're definitely working on ideas and how to increase our membership and what kind of incentives we can give to become a lifetime member. So we all are working on that as we speak, and hopefully we'll have something to present soon.
Okay. And for those who may not know what Friends of the Historical
The
Park
Friends
are.
of the Historical Park basically is an avenue to raise money. They have the credited EIN number so that if anybody wants to donate to the park, funds to the park, it goes through the Friends, and the Friends then has a committee that Hillary goes to and presents what we would like to have done for the park. And if they are granted, then we get funds from the park, from the Friends. And so one of the main fundraisers right now is the chairs, we rent chairs. And so that's, a hefty item to lift chairs. And so we need younger people and recruit younger people and maybe volunteer hours for people that need community service hours. So we're really diving into those, and looking into what we can do to make it better.
We used to have Friends of the Library and just kind of take off of that concept and things. You do a lot of worthwhile things that raise some money. Any other questions?
Yes.
Thanks for the presentation, and as always, you guys do a great job with all the events and everything that you have, and I think you made an important point about trying to reach out and get new people to come in to the boards and all the different positions, to keep kind of the spirit and the attitude and the excitement going on. I have one question. It's not a trick question, but Kids in the Kitchen, Sunday, June 25, watermelon bread. I think watermelon is over 90% water, so
Yes.
how do you make bread out of that?
Hillary, Hillary knows that one.
Wouldn't that be kind of soggy bread?
I'm Hillary Kidd, I'm the Historical Park Manager, and yes, it's a cooking class that we're doing, so the bread is actually colored so it looks like watermelon, so it won't be real soggy.
Okay.
But that's part of our new kids cooking series.
Yeah.
And then the Tasty Time Out is kind of a play on words with Ladies Night Out, and it's also, this one's a cookie decorating, but we've done other ones where it's cake pops and things of that nature.
Well, you solved the mystery, thanks. I know the kids will love that because they always love getting in the kitchen. And trying
One other
things.
thing I wanted to say was I wanted to thank the board for your support in making the event center finally come to life. We are all very excited. And I know not everybody was on board with it, but now that we have broke ground and moving forward, I hope going forward that we all can support each other in making this a great addition. We've had lots of additions to Farmers Branch recently, and I'm very grateful and very thrilled that the historical park can be a part of that with our addition to that, because we really haven't done anything like major, like the park, like the new parks and the Voya and all that. So this is a really big deal for us, and so I just wanted to thank you guys for being on board, and hopefully, I know we will continue y'all's support and going forward.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm starting to have people ask me what the world's going on down there. They've just now realized, some of them, that those early culture buildings are gone.
They are going to be back.
And that would be one of my big priorities.
Oh,
you guys, is
absolutely.
to get those things back up.
Right, we're going to
Right
do.
away.
Right, we're going to do a master plan, so we know where everything's going to go, and it's going to be done very well with a lot of thought, and I'm sure you guys are going to be involved in the process. I just don't know where that is yet with Hillary. I'm not
Well,
privy to that, but we will get those back as soon as
I
possible.
think you're looking for
And we're going to add to it, so hopefully
a
it'll
lot
be
of
good.
pushback if you don't get started on that right away.
Right, we will take that.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move on to A3 and discuss review financial status, revenues, expenditures, project balance, all that.
Mayor and Council, Tammy Zimmerman, Finance Director. I'm seeking confirmation today on the alignment for budget revisions. What I hope to accomplish is an ordinance to revise our currently adopted budget for 22-23 with items that have already been approved by the council or items that have been discussed by the council and staff. So some of the proposed revisions that has already been discussed in council meetings is the Historical Park Event Center loan. That was approved in January. The fire truck was also approved in January. Those were items that were unbudgeted. And there was reasons why. It was, there was some lengthy ordering times for the fire truck and some savings in cost in ordering now. There was additional funding requested for a grant coordinator position and a public safety officer position and a splash pad, which we're going to go through the process and getting community input for our 23-24 budget on the splash pad and utilizing some other funding from our DART. We received $5.9 million in DART funding and would free up some already budgeted street transportation-related projects that could free up a splash pad. We also had discussions with staff and council where we want to set up a reserve for personnel. We have some fleet replacement funding. When we were going through and approving the fire truck, we recognized that we had to change our fleet replacement schedule for our lag times and for the increased cost. Now, we also have just completed our audit, so we have some finalized numbers on our general fund balance, and we have about 6 months of revenue that has occurred in this fiscal year. So we're going to look at some of our projections that we have for our revenue. And there's additional ideas for our City Hall lobby, utilizing DART transportation project funding, and some police training and police radio funding. So the grant coordinator position that was recommended at the last council's study session, that would be a position that kind of does a multitude of things. Identifies some grant funding sources. These would be items that not necessarily were on our radar, but it would allow us to do these projects. And we are, in the finance department, we have to reconcile all the grant funding. There's a lot of work that goes into getting the reimbursements and administration of the grants. So there's the projected cost for their salary. There's additional grant support expenses. This would be for any kind of consulting services that allow them to reach out into the future and grab some some grants that would help us. The public service officer, we're going to request, I believe, 2 in this upcoming budget year, and this would speed this up so that we could go ahead and hire and get them in to service and helping out our police department with traffic-related issues. As we mentioned, we already approved the fire truck and the Historical Park Event Center loan. The loan from general fund of $1.55 million would be paid back in a 20-year period from our hotel motel revenues at 1.5% interest rate. And the fire truck was an additional $1.14 million from our general fund expenditures, and that was due to our increased lead time of 24 months, from 24 months to 36 to 38 months. And we had previous discussions where, in these upcoming slides, I'll talk about fleet replacement schedule. Okay, so we have some revenues that we've looked at, and we're going to say, let's increase them. And we've got some that maybe need to go and get decreased. So we'll start out with the increases. We reviewed our property taxes. From the projected amount of property taxes, we're about 1.7 million over, and that's due to settling of disputed values. And there's some penalties and interest in there as well. Sales tax, we're projecting a revision of 2.5 million. Now, your sales tax is your most volatile revenue source. Most of this increase is due to our inflationary pressures. The higher costs go, the more revenue we receive. Now, the downside of that is inflation increases all of our costs here at the city as well. So we had projected a 14% decrease in sales tax, but good news is it didn't go down. We're also projecting an interest income increase. So $250,000 and great interest rates that we're receiving. We're doing well with the investments that we have. Now, on the opposite side, we have some building permits and multifamily permits that we're decreasing in total by $400,000 is our recommendation. And this is due to some applicants delaying or canceling their builds. Court fees, we're suggesting a decrease of $300,000. And over the last 5 months, citations were down, but excitingly enough, these are on the uptick. So we can hopefully get those back in alignment. Those were items that were in our general fund. So these are some suggested revisions in our other funds. Our hotel motel fund, this is, it pays for itself. When we increase our spending for incentives with hotels, it seems to come back to us. So a $200,000 increase in the revenue would provide an increase to the expense side and would allow Allison's team to go out and provide incentives for hotels' loyalty programs and for the pickleball tournament that's coming to Farmers Branch. We also have the STARS Multi-Sport Bond Fund, where this is just an increase to commercial rent. This is just putting it in alignment. We have an agreement that was signed, I believe, in October, right after approval of the budget, and it's a prepayment of the rent from the STARS. There's the landfill post-closure fund, where it's a net effect of zero. This is just to be transparent when we're moving numbers, where I am decreasing the revenue and in correlation also decreasing the expense. These will be combined in our audit. It will have a net effect of zero. And then this is a new item. It wasn't in the packets. That's because we just received part of this opioid litigation settlement of $94,000. This will go into a special revenue fund, and it's going to be split cost-wise with police and fire, and it provides training and prevention of drug overdoses in the community. So that's a win-win for us. So reserve funding. I mentioned that sales tax is a volatile revenue source. We could have a large contributor, a large company that would leave our city and would put us in a little bit of a bind. So with these recommendations, this revenue stabilization fund, which I can go into more detail after this slide, it would set aside, it'd be a mechanism for stabilizing the volatility of this revenue source. We're recommending 1.6 million be set aside in the revenue stabilization fund. And along those same lines, in stabilizing some of our volatile costs, we have a large amount of personnel that have been with the city for a long amount of time, and when they were to retire, it's a huge hit on the departments for their vacation or, in some instances, their sick payouts. This would allow the departments to immediately fill the positions instead of having to wait until they can afford to recoup that large expense. And another reserve that we're recommending is the fleet replacement reserve. Our fleet director, Tom Higgs, has gone through and painstakingly extrapolated out the data with our increase. I mean, I don't know if any of you have had to go out and try and purchase a car. It's expensive and there's a backlog. So with the ambulance and the fire truck changing in their replacement years and the increased lead times, we're wanting to put $500,000 into this reserve, fleet replacement reserve, to get us a jump start. We'll revisit the fleet replacement reserve as we go through our 23 and 24 budget cycle. City Hall lobby renovation. Most of you came in here through the lobby. There's some security enhancements that have been brought forth that we would like to do. There's some soundproofing that we would like to have outside of the council chambers. This would allow a central service desk for our customer service. We collect a lot of revenue with permits, with our utility billing. It would allow some cross-training of our staff, so we have some succession planning. And it provides some seating areas as well. Now this, we've identified that could use DART funding. Now, it's not a transportation project, but again, it's a project we've identified that is a street that once it's paid for by DART, it would free up general fund. And then our police department has identified some additional police training that would be beneficial to their department that has been delayed and that we would like to put onto the current budget instead of waiting until later. It's been pushed off. And so there's a list that I believe Chief Stokes could help with if there was any questions on that particular detail. Also identified where we could have some savings if we move 187,000 of the police radios that we had budgeted that's in general fund and move that to what is the Consolidated Dispatch Bond Fund. It's a older bond that we're trying to zero out and close up. Okay, so here's the math, and it's a little bit detailed, but the very first column is all of those items I previously discussed and how its effect is on our general fund unassigned balance. We just completed our audit, so we have an audited unassigned fund balance that starts at $23 million. And with all of the proposed revisions, we would get down to 20 million in our unassigned reserve fund. The far right column is all of the decreases or increases to the other funds that are not general fund, the landfill, the consolidated dispatch fund, the STARS, there's the lobby, and then there's the hotel motel. Now, when I mentioned that the general fund balance unassigned would calculate to about 20 million, that's above our target high of 16 million. So the target balances that were adopted in the budget book are 20%, which actually equates to about 74 days of operating expenditures. And our low target is 15%, which is 12 million, or about 54 days in our operating expenditures. So we have good news and we have bad news. Good news, we have a healthy fund balance. Bad news, we have some items that were delayed and would be necessary to try and get us back in alignment. And so there's requests from the council that we have some direction on how we want to proceed forward. And I have some additional slides that I put at the very end and talking a little bit more about the Revenue Stabilization Fund. There's several cities that utilize this additional savings fund for one-time capital projects, interfund loans, economic incentives. And there's also a mechanism to mitigate the volatility in our revenue sources. We talked about the 1.6 million already for our sales tax. There's recessionary pressures that are also coming into play. The inflationary pressures I already mentioned. I know I'm saying pressures too much, but this would help with any unexpected shortage. And it also supplements the city's unrestricted fund balance, where we have strong, high target fund balance. What it wouldn't do is it wouldn't affect our bond rating. We have a AAA bond rating that we received in June. And so I don't know if some of you were here when Marty Shrew, the managing director for Hilltop Securities, did her presentation, but a large reason on why we have our triple bond rating is the positive operating results and our strong fund balance. So this savings mechanism, the reserve, the Revenue Stabilization Fund, can supplement our fund balance targets. So with that, I'm going to leave it open to the council for questions
Okay,
and
folks.
suggestions.
Questions?
Yes. On the AAA, so assuming we do all of the above, does that change anything for our AAA coming into next year?
Dave, you have any questions you want to bring up?
I think Tina's asking one right now, so.
So we have reached out to Marty Shrew with
Okay.
Hilltop Securities and asked that same question. So what they don't like to see is a dip, a strong dip into the reserves. And if you do dip, they want to know, how are you going to get it back up? Obviously, if you start using your reserves for all of your operating expenditures, it's not a good look. We have strong management, financial management. The council has made strong decisions in the past. So with these high reserves, we sit very well in keeping that AAA bond rating.
I have some questions. So I know I saw when I was reviewing my packet, I saw that there was mention about using some funds for police training and radios, which I'm totally in support of that, but I'd like to understand why it wasn't a priority before and why is it, what happened?
I think Chief Stokes can probably answer that a little bit better.
Chief Stokes. You're saying, Eric's still, sorry. When you're saying why the priority wasn't there before, sorry. We've had a new chief, now that we have a new chief in place, we do quarterly training for mental health peace officer, and we have quarterly training for defensive tactics and things of that nature, which we should be ongoing. And so there's a need to finish out our renovation for our training room and to get that training going and get it started right away. And it should have been something that had been pushed up right away, but now we've got it and we have it in place, and if we can get the $30,000, it'll just help us.
I see, so change in leadership, reprioritize certain things, and this is now a priority.
Absolutely.
Understood, thank you.
Okay. Michael?
Yes, I have one question. This might be for Ben and for you. And thanks for the presentation, Tammy. On the proposed City Hall renovation, 1.2 million, how did we come up with those numbers? Have we had a consultant or a study or a bottoms-up approach? I mean, there was a lot of moving parts in there, and we talked a little bit about the idea of this in our conference call, but I'm just curious how we came up with those numbers.
It's an idea that's been maturing. And so part of that was Danielle was reaching out to different consultants, getting concepts of what we thought the target range would be to realize the visual you see and that level of service we're trying to get in the security and safety enhancements. We felt like that was a good target to get to. Because with that target, it includes a lot of features that if we had to value engineer down, there would be ways to go down and maybe in future years build back up, but we could at least achieve the minimums which we were after: enhanced customer service experience for our residents and businesses, and enhanced security for City Hall, which is the baseline minimum we're after, but also to revitalize certain spaces as well to make sure as we move personnel there, are we able to repurpose those office spaces to fit the growing needs of the community? Because we have a fixed size with this building.
Right.
So what can we do to maximize that size and footprint? So a lot of cascading benefits as well, but we felt like that was a good target to move forward with.
Yeah. Well, as we discussed it in our conference last week, you were pointing out the kind of structural and organizational advantages of having people in one place and soundproofing and all of that. So I see that part on the customer side and efficiency, but what is the security part, like enhanced security? Are we talking metal detectors, or what are we talking about?
Essentially,
And can you break it down into the security component and then the, customer relations efficiency component? I mean, 1.2 million is a big number.
it is, and that's why
It's
we're
almost a fire truck.
maybe half.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're utilizing the cost offset from the DART ILA, because we felt like that was the best way to bring this forward. The security enhancements primarily focus on the west side of the building, which is very much open right now. So whereas several of the suites can be locked down or internal services and you have to have a card to get in, there's still suites where we can have folks come in and put staff in an awkward position. Most of our departments, there should be an appointment or they can call up to see if they're available. But just having people walk into the suite, it's, there's not an appointment or anything, it creates that opportunity. We've also had some folks that like to visit City Hall and maybe try and stay at City Hall after it closes and create some security risk and challenges as well. So we're trying to make sure our staff is secure, but we don't sacrifice any of the customer service. And that's the goal we're after. But the west side of the building would now be card activated, and downstairs would have seating areas. So if you have an appointment, you'd be greeted. Somebody would come and get you to the place you're going, similar to any professional office building you enter today. If you go to an office building, you can't just go straight into any suite. And we do have enhancements coming to several of the suites, such as my office as well. We're going to add a glass door there as well, but you'll have Kathleen still up front and a seating area while they get you and get you ready for your meeting, not just walk in there and start yelling at Mike, yelling at whoever. Hey, there's an intentional purpose behind how we bring folks into the building.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because there has to be that security component, and also, not to digress, but I mean, are you also thinking about a security component going forward just for entering the building? I get protecting the other entrances and things like that and making it a harder target, but, anyone can just walk in the door.
Correct.
And there's a secretary sitting, 40 meters away.
Well, in this case, the seating area up front, it's hard to see in the graphic you have in your packet, but there's glass there because they will also be taking payments. And so they will have a way to move back into the suite, and it can lock down if somebody becomes threatening or aggressive in that manner. So that way we can better protect our staff now, because right now there is nowhere to go. You have to actually leave that area, run around to the side, and hope that the gate that comes down as well. So this is actually more secure and more safe.
Yeah.
Because there will be a
Because if
glass
anyone
partition
wants to
there.
do harm, I mean, it would be pretty easy, because you come in and you could go right and into all those offices and go left, and, there's no security check or anything.
Right. So
like
we
you
still
have
have to be open and accessible though. So that's the balance. as
Right, exactly, yeah. Also, could you go back one or two slides where you were talking about, that's the,
Further?
this is, no, back one more. This is the one you're talking about, no, that one.
Okay.
That's where you're talking about the unassigned fund balance, that other cities are doing this? Yeah, I think that there's a good business case to be made for that. Because while, like you said, we've got positives and negatives or pluses and minuses, and we don't know what's going to happen the rest of this year. A lot of economists still expect we're going to have a recession. OPEC Plus has just took over a million barrels of oil off, and oil has gone up. A lot of people are expecting it to keep going up this year, and we still have a land war going on in Europe. So I think it makes sense to have this extra reserve fund set aside because, natural disasters, pandemic, et cetera, it never hurts to have some extra funds. And now that, I think as long as I've lived here, almost 20 years, it's the first time we've had AAA bond rating, which is an envy of many businesses and cities. So I'd like us to be able to keep that. And, you're never going to be penalized for having some extra money on the balance sheet. So I think there's a very good business case to make for doing that. And then you're not, we're, like in the last few, bond or budget reviews in the last couple of years, we've had to look at, well, do we move some funds from here to over there? And it would take that out of the equation. So I don't know what the rest of you think, but I think there's a good business case for that.
When we were researching, there's quite a few municipalities that will call it different things, a savings, a contingency reserve, a rainy day fund. But we are a pay-as-you-go type of city. So we have another strong reason why we received that AAA bond rating is our low debt ratio. So when things pop up, do we have those reserves to help pay for them, or do we have to go out and get loans? So,
Some of the factor, Michael, in lower bond rating before was pending litigations. That affects that rating too. So
Sure.
we don't have a lot right now that I know of that's do that. David?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Tammy, thank you. And I also want to thank you for offering yourself to meet with all of the council ahead of this. I think that was a grand gesture on your part to take that time to do that. On the property tax disputes, is it fair to assume, and that's always a loaded question, that the percentage is fairly comparable to what we normally view our 75-25 split between residential and commercial? Or is this number more commercial in that?
there were quite a few disputes. I don't know if that was abnormal or typical with the assessed valuation process. Now, I'm going to say that the interest income and the penalties are higher this time. But as far as the number of disputed values, I don't have that number
That's fair.
for you.
That's fair.
Our collection rates always run.
Yeah, but
99%.
I think we always look at property tax and there's a high tendency to feel that's residential. And I just, again, want to emphasize that this is a mix.
Correct,
And
correct.
In fairness to
Some
you,
of our-
we don't have a definitive number on that. And so that's why I just wanted
Correct.
to emphasize if it's comparable to what we normally see in property taxes. That's all. So thank you.
Correct.
If we can move to the landfill for a moment, and Shane, this goes back to you, and I saw it on the slide where you summarize, and I don't know, it doesn't have slide 10, it has a number I see now. Shane, it has a decrease of the Huffines SRF expense to LC/PC. Can you help me understand where we're taking that decrease?
So we're going back to 2018. Shane Davis, Director of Sustainability and Public Health. In 2018, we had a settlement agreement with the City of Louisville to go to landfill expansion. Actually, settlement agreement before that. Part of the settlement agreement was we put in escrow for the future construction of Huffines Road, curb gutter, the full thing. Those of you who've been to our landfill, when you first enter the site, our old skill house is still sitting there. At some point in time, that will be full-blown road from there to our new entrance. So it's the construction of that portion of Huffines Road from kind of where it stops when you go, it's obvious difference when you leave a constructed road onto our on-site road. So it'd be the construction of Huffines Road, that last portion down to the future corporate drive that's coming through right now.
Okay.
We already started building that.
So at some point, we would still have to fund
I believe this is the
$300,000.
last one, correct, or?
Yes, it's actually over and done with. This is a correction to that.
So I thought-
Okay, all right, thank you for that clarification, I appreciate that. On the fleet replacement reserve, I can appreciate all the conversations we've had about fleet replacement and how we need to catch up to the annual replacement timeframe. Understanding that this is an interim step to that, and I'll ask probably Tom, is the hope and plan that this is an interim step that will catch up in 23, 24? Or is this like a third, we'll catch up a third, and we'll do another third? And I'm just trying to lay the groundwork on how we get to the objective that we all want, that we have a more compressed turnover time frame for those vehicles.
Yes, sir. So Tom Higgs, the Director of Fleet Facilities. So we're working on an extended plan that's going to actually look at the rest of the fleet. So we took a look at the fire apparatus particularly this year and realized with the marketplace and the extended build times that that's been tremendous. Of course, the upgrade to the assets themselves and the extended cost. But what we're seeing, and as I started analyzing the rest of the fleet, is that we are somewhat behind. And so I'm looking at probably doing a 4-year phased-in plan, but again, we'll visit that when we start talking about the new budget cycle in a little bit more detail.
Thank you for the clarification, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, sir.
So perfectly fine, I appreciate the longer arc on that. And this next question is about going back to the lobby improvements, the 1.2. Ben, could you clarify for those listening, when we talk about using the DART money for that, clarify a little bit on, we're reallocating monies for street improvements for these items, and then when the DART money comes in, the street improvement monies we have, and I'll let you be more elegant in that response.
I'll do my best.
Thank
And
you.
so basically, the end result is there will be a cost offset, and we're going to show that we're funding the improvements to the City Hall lobby through the funding that we're receiving from reimbursements from DART from approved projects. And so using one project to fund another, essentially, DART said they support those actions. And so as soon as they said that, I was like, wow, we can fund maybe some things that weren't able to do before, because that's why this proposal is in front of you as part of this time in there. It also aligns to, again, safety, security, customer service, but trying to find a pathway to fund it without.
I think my point here was just to clarify that we're not spending DART mobility monies on the improvements to the City Hall, but there's a method to this order.
Correct.
And it's shifting the dollars. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much. Appreciate that clarification. And let's see, I had one other one here. Actually, I didn't write it down very well, so I will skip it and ask it another time when I remember.
Well, maybe it'll come to you.
Maybe.
Okay, I have one last question. Can you go back to slide 3? Okay, on the PSO officer, and as you had stated, we were looking at 2. What does it look like to add SRO officers? Can you answer that for me? School resource officers.
Well, I'm going to defer to Chief Stokes, but I did learn this morning that this was a potential half funding with the school district.
Correct.
believe.
So, and considering this was a possible consideration for discussion, the chief has already reached out. HR has already figured out the pieces we would need. And again, just police department, all these different departments coming together, and finance saying, what would this look like if we were to go in that direction? So Kevin, he's hitting the ground running, right? And so what would happen is he already reached out to the school district so we could be prepared to answer. They would fund half of the position. And I said, well, how many schools do we have? Why not have one everywhere? And it's because it's still hiring a police officer, and we got to fill the vacancies we have. So it's about managing expectations. It's something we could definitely move forward with now and start the process. But to say we need more than just one, that would also create a challenge in filling the positions and the vacancies we already have. So the school district would have to get an agreement again, worked with them. They would pay half of the position. And what's the benefit is during the summer, that position would be used for other benefits as well, such as we then have more students participating in summer programs, such as Summer Funshine. It would allow us to then repurpose these officers over the summer months or when school is out for the benefit of the city and the changing needs that happen over the course of the year. So definitely doable. There's a cost sharing involved, which is even more beneficial. So it is a way to, and also to have a greater presence in our schools. The officer would rotate between the elementary schools in the current form is how they would approach it today if council was to say, this is something we want to move forward with. You've seen the fund balance. This is an opportunity I'm comfortable saying, yes, we can do this. If this is something council wants to do and the police department's comfortable with managing that request along with the other departments involved. So the money needs to be there. HR needs to be able to help us get the position filled. We're comfortable we can check all of those boxes.
Okay, are the SRO, if I'm understanding it correctly, the PSO and the SRO are not the same, correct? The SRO
Correct.
is a full officer, so then we could lean into in worst case scenario, correct?
So, I can answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
You got the hard one, I get the easy one.
Okay.
I want the easy one. Eric Stokes again, Assistant Chief of Police. The public safety officer is a non-sworn position, but they can do traffic enforcement and some of the non-police functions. The SRO, School Resource Officer, is a sworn, certified officer, which we can greatly utilize, like the city manager said, that we could use. So yes, that's the distinction between the two.
Okay.
So it would effectively add our count by one in the police off department in that area.
Richard, questions?
So 2 questions. The public service officers, we're asking for 2 more this year in addition to the 2 that we have now.
I believe it was one more that we'll be asking for. It was going to be 2 in this next budget cycle. We're just bumping this one early.
Okay, early. Okay, very good. So then we'll have a total of 3.
Sir, I can answer that one too.
Can you add to 4, Eric?
We additionally asked 1 public safety officer, but it's gonna be a public safety officer 2 level. That's the position that we have. We have 2 current public safety officers, but their position, their title, their job description is totally different from this new job description that we have right now.
Okay,
So we would utilize these 2 officers to do, it would require some ordinance changes and things of that nature to do traffic enforcement, parking violations, a lot of send up skywatch trailers and things of that nature to do that. Where these other public service officers, they're clerical and some of them are just, their job description is totally different from this one.
okay, all right.
So yes, you're right,
Thank you.
it'd be 4, but 2 enforcement number 2 officers, 2 PSO ones.
Okay, very good. And then last question is, the grant coordinator position. Ben, is there any research on a grant coordinator, sort of the return on their position? Like an average grant coordinator gets X percent grants for the city compared to their salary or the cost, or?
Yeah,
We did discuss it. Typically, you don't get every penny that you put into a grant coordinator position back. But you are allowed to put in administrative cost and when you're writing the grants. Now, these grants come later on, so it's not going to be paid for in its first year, but it will help. What it also helps us do, which in finance, you can't really, we are overrun with the record keeping in our grants. We've got 11.9 million in our ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, where we've got our parks that has a grant. We have departments that are trying to monitor their different grants. This would centralize that position and help our departments out while going out and seeing additional projects that we wouldn't normally be able to do that we're now able to do. We've got funding for.
So the cost of this role can be rolled into some of the grant costs in,
Typically, it's 10% that you write into
10% you
administrative.
can typically, yeah.
Portion,
Okay.
it's
It's
limited.
10%.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
I got a couple, this has some bullet answers. We're down $300,000 in building permits. Is that because we had a bubble of last year, the year before, or is there a
So-
big trend going on there or something?
And I can speak to our community service director. She provided the numbers for the decrease. We actually had some applicants that decided to not continue with their permit, or they're being delayed with their permits. And that could be for economic reasons or the high cost of doing construction.
Okay. And we're down $300,000 in the court fees. Is that just because of apprehensions?
So sorry, I apologize.
Make sure.
Traffic citations and traffic issues and that, they're down. Revenue's been down, but she said there was an uptick for traffic citations. And I go back to the new leadership. There's a new leadership, there's a new infuse for officers to get out there and get after and do what they need to do.
I know there's a difference on the street.
And so, yes, there is that difference, and so that's where we're at for those numbers right there.
Okay, we're interested, do you have roughly an idea what our current deposits is in financial institutions, banks and things like that?
Well, we have investments of $128 million. And we are collateralized, if that's your concern, as far as
Well,
Our
we have
deposits?
sinking funds, we have all kinds of revenue funds deposited for the future. And I know it's very limited to what we can invest in, return on investment. With the interest rates going up, though, on lots of things, I think that, there may be some opportunities for us there. A lot of this stuff is used, we collect all the taxes the first year and use them out, but we always have a lot of reserve money sitting around that is somewhere needs to be collected the best interest we can legally collect on it.
So the council approves our investment policy annually, and we have a committee that meets, and we just met, I believe, about a week or two ago. And as things mature, some of our investments, we go and look at different yields. We are restricted to very secure and stable
Yes, I
investments.
Understand.
But we were able to reach out and obtain a CD, which had a high yield, interest yield.
And on this proposed change in sales tax collection point and paying that, how much do we think that's going to really affect us? I mean, we're growing, we're getting a lot more people moving here. That's what taxes will be charged, a point of where it's delivered to as opposed to us selling it. But do we see a big switch in that?
It's always a target and always a discussion with the comptroller's office, and so it's not going away, and so we always want to be prepared for any shifts. My understanding, it was several $1 million if that was ever to shift. I believe 4 million was the number I recall from last year's discussion. So there's a large potential for that to have major impacts if and when it ever does move forward. We're hoping that there's a cool down period on any direction to where it gives cities time to adjust, because we're at the low end of the impact. So some of these cities will be having tens, if not lots, millions of dollars in their budgets being impacted. And that's why you see Capel sitting on such a high fund balance, is just in case that changes. Because when you see their comparatives, you're going to know, why do they have such a high fund balance? It's for if and when that were to change.
Okay. And on equipment, I certainly support replacement on a lot of our key vehicles in a shorter time frame than we've had, but it seems to me like we have an awful lot of vehicles that don't get utilized very often. Are we looking at any type of a joint program with any of the other cities? Some of these equipment, it's nice to be able to get it, but we don't use it but maybe once every month or 2 months or something like that. Can we work with some of these other cities and maybe a lease program on some of this stuff that we do? And what's the average length of a pickup truck that we keep in this city, and how many miles does it get on it when we put it up for auction and sell it?
Tom, so
That is such a variable question, so it kind of goes to your point about utilization. It depends on what it's doing. So the typical average model should have been 12 years, 80,000 miles, but we have a lot of the fleet that is long past that.
I know I see a lot of them sitting around. So, okay, let's
Keep them in
see.
good shape so they keep rolling.
We do, yes, sir. And I will add one other thing too, Mayor, is that it's not always the miles that kill the kill the vehicle. It's the idling hours, or running time hours. So just like on your newer vehicles, you can put the runtime hours and switch it over to see what the runtime hours are on the engine. So one runtime hour is equal to 33 miles of wear and tear. So to give you an example, I think I've used this before, is the patrol vehicle. It'll have 10,000 to 15,000 runtime hours on it, which equates to about 300 to 350,000 miles in a 3-year period. So
Oh, I
that's
understand,
the
I understand a
extreme.
police car is a whole different issue.
And that's the extreme, yes.
But a lot of our other stuff that sits around, I think, we look at.
I remembered my question.
Okay, all right.
Give it to us.
Tammy, what, you mentioned going back to the police radio bond fund, that the consolidated dispatch bond fund was one we were trying to eliminate and
Correct.
pay down. What is the balance? That's what I wrote. I couldn't read my own writing. It was so.
I want to say it's in the $100,000 level. I can get back with you on the
That's
specifics.
that's fine. You don't have to. It's in that
It's-
low dollar.
It's over 187,000. This won't decrease it to zero,
Okay.
but
is in
it
the
gets us
ballpark.
closer.
Fair enough. Thank you. That's all the information I had.
Any other questions on this?
I have one more question. Yes, Tammy, you mentioned some of our investments maturing, and you reinvested one in a high-yield CD. How do you judge in the current market, how far out on the yield curve to go when rates have been so volatile and the bond market's been so volatile?
So we've been
Do you look at
typically
getting
trying to
the
do a
greatest
shorter
yield,
term of
or do you
maturity.
try to
Yeah.
have a staggered, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years kind of approach?
So our treasury manager, Mark Woodward, does a great job in scheduling out, looking at our maturities, identifying when we're going to need to pull some cash for payments, having our cash flow, and then looking at the different options. It can be a high yield, but it could be for 2 years, and maybe we don't want to do that. So we'll go with maybe a lower yield with a shorter maturity.
Right.
So we get together, we have our investment committee, which is made up of city manager, our deputy finance director, and myself. And we discuss and we make a vote on it, and then we go out to the market and purchase.
Thanks.
Or the deposits we carry, Michael, when interest rates go up, I mean, it behooves us to.
Oh,
Pay
absolutely.
attention to what
Absolutely.
what's going. And I'm sure they do, but I mean, we need to be after on top of that all the time. Any other questions on that ice? Thank you.
Before she steps away, I want to make sure page 10 of her presentation is the direction of council as she prepares the ordinance to amend the budget. Are you all comfortable with these changes? And are you all comfortable with including the SRO to be added to this as well? Because the next meeting, she'll bring back the ordinance that amends the budget. And I just want to make sure, this is a lot of stuff going on here. I just want to make sure y'all are good.
Right. How much is an
Yeah,
SRO?
thank you. That's.
Anybody?
I did look at it. I gotta get the numbers. So I get the numbers and get it back.
Is it comparable to what we have?
officer. It is,
Yes.
it is. And so I've gotta get the numbers, though I have it, and I'll look at it and get it back.
So range.
So Yoko Matsumoto, Director of HR, the range is about 75 starting to 97, 780.
And we'll be doing 50% of that, correct, because we're doing it the half.
And we're doing one? We want one.
We want an additional one.
Okay.
Correct, that's what the,
And with that 7 and 97, it's also including benefits and all that too. So you got benefits to think about.
So 50% of, say, 100,000. If we,
I would say we typically put about 20% on a benefits piece there. So if you look at the range, it's 75 to 97 plus that 20% and then
Yeah.
50%.
Yeah, you're still.
about 55. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
very comfortable from the financials on my side. I just want to make sure y'all are comfortable with these changes included as we bring it back.
Yes.
So by adding the SRO, we would be adding it effectively now so that we can be able to leverage this SRO for whatever
Summer.
plans we may have in the summer.
Correct. Well, we just got to fill the position, and that would allow them another goal to
Yes.
fill.
Okay.
As far as position.
I'm comfortable with both of those.
So that 50,000, just to back on the SRO, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were going to split that with the school district, if the 50% of 100,000 is 50,000, it's only 25,000 impact to the city. Is that correct?
No.
In the assumption?
I would say
Okay.
if it's 100,000 and they're paying 50%, then ours would be that 50% of the 100.
Or is it 50?
So it'd be
50% of the year.
Plus it's half a year.
Plus it's half a
Yes,
year.
Correct.
Yes.
I missed that. But yes, I
Okay.
gotcha. Yes.
We're on the same page. There's a lot of moving numbers. Thank you very much.
This year's budget impact is roughly 25.
25. Okay.
But long
Yes.
term.
Okay.
And it's 50 or so.
Right.
And, and the school district is ready to,
Yes.
Yes.
okay,
Chief McCoy already talked to the school district, and school district, they agreed to it.
Very
okay,
good.
good,
Good.
good.
So the
All
answer to
right.
your
Yes.
question is yes.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm
you.
gathering from the
Appreciate it.
council that all these revisions that were proposed on here with the addition of the SRO position, add those, and we'll provide an ordinance at the next council meeting which
Yes.
adopts those revisions.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job,
Ready
Tammy.
to go to A4, discuss amendment to city ethics policy relating to the endorsement of candidates. Councilman Jackson, was this your issue that you wanted to bring up?
It was.
Good afternoon,
Yes.
Mayor and Council. How is everybody today? I'm here to talk about a proposed amendment to the ethics policy. The ethics policy is found in this Chapter 2 of the city's Code of Ordinances, so any amendments would require ordinance approval. The item proposed this evening to be considered is the endorsement of candidates running for city council. So with that particular item, something to consider is that First Amendment rights and freedom of speech will not allow enforcement of that item should we receive a complaint. But council as a whole, as a statement, as one voice, can certainly include that in the ethics policy as just showing your support for impartiality. So with that, that's the only item I have for amendment to the ethics policy this evening, but I have included the entire policy in your packet. So if there's other items that you want to consider, we can discuss those as well and see if they want to be included as one full amendment to the policy.
I think I do have several questions and concerns. Number one, it should not just be city council. If we're going to go all in on this on ethics, it should be mayoral candidate. It should be, I mean, honestly, since it's just completely infringing upon our First Amendment rights, which we took an oath for, we might as well just throw the president in there as well. I mean, that's really how strongly I feel about this. I mean, I know my husband, we take oaths as council members, effectively the same oath as our first responders. And I know my husband, who defended our country, took an oath for. And should we say ugly things about other people? No, we shouldn't. But should we be allowed to stand for what we believe in? Yes, we absolutely should. And that's what our First Amendment rights are for, and that's the Constitution.
Richard?
Would you like my second comment on that? So my next concern is, since we all took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and we've brought this before us, I look at this as a monetary thing and what we spent behind the scenes of not thinking about something that we want but is not enforceable. Because how many, I mean, I know Pete had to cover it, and I know his head spins over it because he's an attorney. And how much does he charge per hour to review these things that he knows isn't enforceable? And I think that's where we need, as fiscal conservatives, you have to look at that. That's one of those back end issues that we're spending. And I know it's administrative cost, but it is still taxpayers' dollars. We pay money for that. That we, at the end of the day, that has to be a line item budget that administratively, our staff, we paid attorneys for this. It's not enforceable. Why would we do this and spend money on something we know isn't enforceable?
You done?
I am.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I understand. I asked for this item because my concern was impartiality and what's best for our city. And My experience walking onto this council was not the same as yours. And my intent of wanting to look at this, in which, understand, our council and staff research a lot of ideas and expend money in that research and nothing comes of it. This one's important to me because the use of the title council member in an endorsement, I believe, is problematic. Not looking to squash anyone's First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. You're more than welcome to talk about whatever you want to talk about. But when you use the office to promote a political candidate, and I don't support going beyond Farmers Branch City Council members and Farmers Branch Mayor. I don't support going to the president. Only the local elections. I don't believe it's appropriate to use the title of your elected position as an endorsement element in social media, push cards, speeches. In a private conversation, that's a private conversation. But when you take it public and you say, as a city council member of Farmers Branch, I support Daffy Duck for city council, I believe that's wrong. Again, I'm not trying to infringe on anyone's First Amendment rights. Whether or not it's enforceable legally, I think if it's an agreement among council members that it is still enforceable within the council.
Pete, is it enforceable?
No, it's not.
Using the city's, using the title of city council as part of your endorsement.
Even if you didn't use the title, I'm speaking to you not as a council member, but as a citizen, and I support John.
Mhm.
It has the same impact.
Exactly.
And, you know, and what I suggested was if you wanted to have some kind of a guideline, it would be endeavor not to refrain from endorsing another candidate. Many cities over a period of time, but they change, as you well know. A lot of cities had kind of an informal agreement among the council members that they would never endorse or support somebody. And then that changed one election year, and then it changed forever. So I don't think it's enforceable. I think you're just asking for trouble. You're going to find people filing complaints, ethic complaints, and we're going to spend time. And we already went through that recently on unrelated matter, but you saw how time-consuming that was.
Right.
And I think if you want to have a standard or a guideline by which you would hope everyone would live by, that's fine. But to make it subject to the complaint process, you're just asking for more trouble. And it'll be challenged on constitutional grounds. And I don't think it'll survive.
Well, I
And
think.
that's going to be expensive litigation. And then
Understood that. I do understand that. But I think if we mutually agree that it's best for our city toward an impartial appearance, that our city council is not out there campaigning and endorsing city council members or city council candidates or a mayoral candidate as a city council member. That, I think that shows that we're holding ourselves a little bit higher to a higher standard, and we should be. In fact, we've said often among this council that we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. We have an employee policy that employees cannot put a sign in their yard or endorse a candidate, and I realize that's an employer.
That's not technically true. An employee has a First Amendment right to engage in political speech, not while in uniform, not while on duty. So if they want to it's not a good idea for an employee to put a sign up in their yard, or for Ben to put one up in his yard, for that matter. But they can do that if they want. There's nothing that prohibits that.
But it's our policy that says you shouldn't do it, right?
No.
Do we have a policy that speaks to?
No, it's their right. but it's also good form and recommendations too. But also with the household, there's a challenge too, is that a lot of times there's more than one person living in that
Right.
household. So the voice can be multiple voices.
Right.
But for staff, the strong thing is while we're in an official capacity as an employee, absolutely not. Outside of work, they're still individuals, but there's also best form, and we do coach best form as well. But it's not, hey, you can't do that. It's, hey, think about the form of what we're trying to do. We should, as staff, should always seem impartial regardless of anything else when possible. But again, they still have the First Amendment right when it comes down to it. But we do coach best practices, best form, beyond reproach.
Okay.
Richard, I think from a practical standpoint, I don't think it's good ideology or whatever you want to say for essentially a sitting council person to go out and say, I'm for this person or I'm for that person. You know, that person gonna get elected, the other person gets elected, you start off the wrong foot with them. Or even the one that you supported, does he feel an obligation to you? Because you want 5 people in here or 6 people that are independent thinking people, that's when you have the best government, I think,
Right.
from my experience with it. And so I certainly discourage it. Now, you're going off council and somebody says, you know, who do you think ought to be? Well, that's your opinion.
It's a private
That's it. You're not
conversation.
going to be there to involve yourself in that. But and what you say privately, that's, I don't really encourage people to get out, or active council people who are on the council to get out and start campaigning for people. I think that gives people the wrong taste in their mouth of the whole thing. So it's for my 2 cents worth.
So Coppell has an ordinance that's quite restrictive among their council. In fact, it goes beyond municipal candidates. So I'm curious as to how Coppell envisions the enforceability or at least the effectiveness, because that's really what's at focus here, the effectiveness. I think if we all agree that it's better to not do it, again, that attributes to impartiality, and I believe that's we're doing what's in the best interest of our city.
I'm not familiar with theirs right now, but I'm happy to look at that and get back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, a lot of cities pass a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can go to any city and you'll find some rule or regulation that's on the books. And then when you go to check with them, well, we don't enforce it.
No.
So,
Okay.
but I'll be happy to look at that and get back to you.
You wanna
Okay.
comment?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if this is the right approach. It sounds like maybe it's not. But I came on council at the same time as you did, and I'm sure everything that occurred with your campaign occurred in mine. And I think that puts a sour taste in our mouth, and that experience is unlike any other, to come on board and think that maybe you're not going to be supported by other council members. And it makes things a lot harder, because you do want to reach out sometimes. And we've had conversations where it's like, we're able to talk to one another, but I didn't feel that level of comfort walking on board. And I think what we're after is to try and find a solution to that problem so that it doesn't happen again. And like I said, I don't know if this is the right solution. It sounds like maybe it's not, but what is? And maybe there is no solution, and then everyone's just going to have to bite the bullet every single time that it repeats itself. That's just how it is. So if there's a solution, I'm certainly happy to support it. But if it's not enforceable, and if after looking into what Coppell's policy is saying, and if it's you find the same opinion, then maybe it's not the right solution. But I encourage other council members and maybe our staff, if there is a creative solution that might help hinder that from happening again, then we explore it.
As I said, you can establish a guide, an ethical rule that you want everybody to try to adhere to, but you just can't make it a subject of the complaint process.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so if you want to say, we believe in impartiality, and therefore we encourage all council members not to endorse candidates for city council, and that always includes the mayor, city council.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that sounds like a very
and that-
appropriate response.
And that's fine, you can do that, but you just don't want to make it subject to the complaint process.
course.
Because, and I'm quickly looking through there, and I don't find it Richard, but I'm happy to check further.
1A3, or 1A-3-10.
Political activity.
While they're doing that, if I may, Mayor, I would like to just say I really can't support this because I am fanatical on the First Amendment and freedom of speech. And, the press is also speech. And Thomas Jefferson said a couple hundred years ago, if I had to choose between a free government and a free press, he said, I'll take the free press. Because without a free press, you're not going to have a free government. And that's not an exact analogy, but, we all have the First Amendment rights. And I think there's the legal question, which that's Pete's job, but I don't think it's enforceable. I think it will just create more problems than it solves. And also, I would just say then there's the practice part. And in recent history and further back, candidates for city council and mayor have been endorsed and not endorsed by one or another people. And you can argue it's not had an effect because it's not causal. People were recommended or endorsed for this or that, and they still lost. And also in local elections here, there have been people that, say a city councilman or mayor in another city around us says, well, yeah, I endorse so-and-so because they've known them 5 or 10 or 20 years. And it's just a fundamental right that I think is has to trump everything else. And I don't think it's enforceable. And then there's the practical part. I mean, let's be honest. All of us have been or will be asked, in this election or this election for this policy or this candidate, who do you favor or who do you know? Who have you met? Who have you talked to? And so I think it's a good idea maybe that we don't endorse and go out publicly, me, council member so-and-so says this and this. But then you also have people that have been on council and they send out a blast email to 1,000 or a couple of thousand people strongly endorsing one candidate over another, but they haven't, gone out and
And spoken to the other candidate.
yeah, and they can say, well, this is a private conversation. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to get into that, but I just think this would open a whole barrel of problems, and I don't see that it would solve anything because we're all still going to be asked, well, what's your opinion on this? Whether it's the budget or whether it's, upcoming election. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I think it sounds like maybe what Pete suggested as a kind of a good middle ground is not to include it as something that's part of the ethics violation piece of it, but maybe a statement of impartiality that the council believes in that. And I don't know if that's something that you'd be comfortable with doing. That's something that I think would be a good compromise.
I'm comfortable with it, even to the extent that it's for lack of a better term, a gentleman's agreement.
Gentleman and lady.
I didn't take offense to it. That's okay. I was with you. I got where you're going.
You understand what I'm saying,
Yeah.
though, right? Again, I think it's good, and I think it's us holding ourselves to a higher standard. There are many things that we don't go out and actively promote about ourselves when we're campaigning or on council. One of those is perhaps our political stance, because, this is an impartial, this is a nonpartisan, impartial, commission. So I think that this helps to remove a little bit of a barrier. You mentioned you don't believe that endorsements have been causal or have caused a certain outcome one way or another. I don't know that either. But I can tell you what my experience was walking onto this council into that situation. There clearly was an impact of those endorsements. And just simply trying to lay some groundwork so that future councils, current councils, will work together, have an open, inviting environment where we can have those conversations openly without.
Right. I understand what you're saying, and I think I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm empathetic to that. But just as an example, in my campaign in 2020, one council member, Mr. Baumgardner, who's now deceased, he did endorse me, and very publicly. And he met with me. He'd known me because I was on planning and zoning for a few years. And he also met with my opponent for breakfast, lunch, whatever, multiple occasions, and had several conversations. And he wrote a letter, which I think you could say was kind of dispassionate. And he said his impressions and what he thought of candidate A and B, and that was me and my opponent. And he said, his choice was me. But he put reasons. He didn't just say, well, I'm councilman and I want this guy. But he's exercising his freedom of speech. And I know that there was another council member or two that did not publicly endorse me, but I know they supported me. And if someone asked them, what do you think of this race? So I don't see how we can kind of get around some of these things. And I agree, we need to hold ourselves to higher standards. I think we all take our oaths very seriously. Fiduciary responsibilities, everything. That's why we discuss all these things in the long budget meetings. But, where do you draw the line? And, just to put everything on the table, Tina's talking about she has the freedom of speech and everything. She has a business, and she has a couple of campaign signs right now on her property for mayor candidate and for city council candidate. So are you saying she's got to take those down? I just think it's a question.
I don't see the signs being an endorsement.
You don't?
Really?
I don't.
Okay.
Because she and her husband live on that property, and those could be her husband's signs, right?
Well, in all fairness, they walked in and asked my front desk. And I do have, as I have spoken with the other mayoral candidate, I do have an open door policy on that. And had they done that, the answer would have been yes. They stated they had one at the other corner, so they did not feel it was necessary, but thank you. So you put one up, you put them all up, as far as I'm concerned. But I told my staff on the front end, don't come ask me. Don't come to the back of the building and ask me.
But my point is, we could debate this all day long and all night long, but, no one is going to drive down Valley View and say, what's that business? They've got a sign there for candidate A or B. I'm going to call them and ask, is that the man of the house or the woman of the house who's endorsing that candidate? And,
is it a
do they
city
know
council
him?
member?
Have they known him 5 years? Or did someone just come renegade and stick the sign? I think, I'm not a lawyer, but I think anyone going by, a normal person, will say, well, person living here or this business is supporting candidate A or candidate Y. And
Well, on that
I think
same
who
note-
wouldn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
just saying, because we're talking about ethics and we're talking about legal and then we're talking about perception. And my perception is going down the street, if someone's got a yard sign for senator or, whatever, that's who they're backing.
But I think what Pete is saying is it's not something that we can include
Oh,
as
absolutely.
part. It's not something we can include as part of the ethics policy that can be enforceable because it's not enforceable.
Right.
And it cannot be challenged. So rather than doing that, the alternative to that is including a statement saying that we as council members believe in impartiality. So are you saying that you would not be in favor of including a statement of impartiality?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I think.
I think that's what I was trying to get
There's
to.
what we put on paper here that probably most people aren't going to read, and then there's the reality. And I try to be in the reality and look at the real economy. And I've had people in the last few weeks call me, say, hey, what's up? I know this is Tina's business, and she's got a sign for so-and-so, and she has a sign for so-and-so. And I say, I don't know, ask her. And they've asked me, my opinions, just like they ask all of us opinions on this race or that race. That's just human nature. So I'm just saying, I think we can have a guideline and aspire to being impartial, but, it's complicated. I don't know what else to say.
David, do you have any comment
Yeah,
on
I
this?
do. I do. And I think the impartiality is, a fair, aspiration. But at the end of the day, any one of us can turn around, and Pete already used the use case, that separate myself from David Merritt, the individual, or David Merritt, the city council member. Doesn't matter. So, what are you accomplishing? I agree that it's good, but at the end of the day, we have to step up here. And if I want to take the city in a direction, I have to, guess what? I have to earn your respect in order to turn the ship to do that. And therefore, you may not see it the same way as I do. And we have to, come to the table with those challenging discussions. And sometimes it looks like adversarial conversation, but sometimes that's the way things get done. And that's not to say we want it to be adversarial, but it sometimes has the perception, and you used this term on the dais before, perception is the reality.
No, I meant if you don't correct the perception, it becomes reality.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. So we have to deal with the public and how they view these interactions. And I've heard, we've all heard the negative, we're biting at each other, et cetera, et cetera. Well, sometimes that's the sausage making that happens when you have to get things done. And I think we all aspire to wanting our city to be in a better place. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to come to this seat at the table today, next May, in every May, and I know a lot of people want to change the challenge of the electoral cycle, but somebody's going to have to come in here and do the very same thing of trying to earn the trust of everyone around this particular table and all of the staff as well, and make sure that you're not, wearing a tinfoil hat and, just being silly. And so you have to come with your best effort forward. And sometimes we're not going to see eye to eye, and that's okay. That is perfectly okay. And I think impartiality for an election is a slippery slope. And similar to what Michael said regarding Baumgartner, he was very kind with me in the election, and he actually walked his neighborhood with me and visited with his neighbors. And so that was very impactful to me because the man was very, very sick when he was doing that. So that meant something to me. And so I think that he was a sitting council member. And so how do you separate that? He's their neighbor. You can't. And so at the end of the day, we come to this table and we all have to work together. That's the underlying assumption. And so whether that's impartiality in elections, I don't think that matters. And so that's why I would not support that particular statement in elections. I think it's kind of de facto happens already.
Yeah, it's human nature, I've supported a lot of people run for council, didn't turn out the way I thought they were going to, so who knows what you're getting anyway, so.
They backfire.
Any other on that? All right, let's move on. We're getting out of time here. Possible options on recording all board meetings.
Yes.
You gonna give us a-
Yes,
So where did we
yes.
leave off on that?
All right.
Where do we leave off on that? Because I think part of the discussion was trying to find direction for Stacy on where do we go, and I'm not really clear on what's next.
Pete's got to look at the Capel.
So we'll come back and meet about this.
Three,
Okay.
you want to talk about a suggested idea?
We'll get you a memo with an update from Pete, and then the options for consideration, and based on our meetings, we'll determine if y'all would like us to bring it back to council for action or not. But we'll get you updated information for consideration quickly.
All right.
Okay.
You have homework, Pete.
Gotcha. Want to make sure y'all have time to eat. Let's get you going.
Already built the
All right, Jeff.
All right, Mayor,
You're fine.
council members, Jeff Brady, Director of Communications, and I'm delighted to be here batting cleanup for you today.
Thank goodness.
We're going to keep this very short. Let's see, we don't need that. Okay, here we go. So the question came up recently, would it be a good idea, could we, and if so, how would we record not just these meetings, but all meetings? So that means boards and commissions, all panels that the city conducts. Would this be a good idea, and if so, could we do it? How should we do it? So some context here, just to kind of set the table, to put this topic in perspective, that we have about 10 panels. I'll call them panels. That means boards and commissions, about 10 here with the City of Farmers Branch. Most meet monthly. There are one or two who meet quarterly, 4 times a year. So that equates to approximately 104 annual meetings during the course of the year. So that's a lot of things to record. we are required to keep these recordings if we make them 90 days, according to legal counsel. That doesn't mean that's the only length of time we need to keep them, but that's what we're required to do once a recording is made. As far as we can tell, no other DFW area cities does this. So we'd be charting new territory. Now, that doesn't mean it's good, bad, or indifferent. Just so you know, in context, none of our neighbors do this. Nobody in the Dallas area records all meetings. Basic considerations we took into account. Are we talking about audio or video? Does that matter? Who would be responsible? Who's going to do the recording? Where to archive? Where to keep these? Is this for council's use or for the public's use, or both? How long to archive, regardless of what the legal constraints are? What would the cost be? And then lastly, what is the utility? What are we doing this for? How many people would actually make use of these recordings? So answer is there's a lot of ways to do it. Okay, there's many ways to do it. We have a lot of technological tools at our disposal. Very briefly, the most basic, we could assign the recording duty to a president. Every board or commission has a president. They're there at every meeting, and they could record the event. We do it we all have a recording device. So the president could conceivably record it right here. Post as an MP3 on the website. Not complicated. Free, okay? The negative here, though, it would be dependent on the quality of the device, how much storage is available, and the ability of that president. Not all of us are, technically adept in these recording processes. Now, the most elaborate concept, we also consider this, we could hire an AV company. We've got an AV company right here who's recording this meeting and helping us post. We could record on existing AV equipment. We've got cameras in the room. We've got cameras in the hub, cameras in council chambers, which are here, ready to use. We could create a separate YouTube channel just for the meetings if we wanted to. Now, the cost to hire an AV production company on an annual basis for these separate meetings would be about $50,000. And it would require us to have all the meetings held in City Hall. So as you understand, not all the meetings are held in City Hall. We have Mansky Library, Rec Center, Branch Connection, etc. So let's jump to the point here. The best option, what we're going to suggest is that we take a step in this direction and then evaluate. Okay, what does that mean? 6-month pilot program. We try it for 6 months, see how we like it. We pick one panel. Council would select perhaps one council to be our guinea pig to try this. The staff liaison, there's a member of the staff, the city council or city hall staff, who is the liaison for each board or commission, so that person could be asked to record the meeting. We use a city laptop and what's called an OWL 360. And I got a little education on these from our friend Mark Samuels. This is what an OWL 360 looks like. It's a recording device. It sits in the middle of the table, and we already have one, right, Mark? We have one, and it records in the 360. So it records everyone who's seated around the table, audio and video. How would we archive these? Well, we already have a Microsoft Teams account. The city has an account we could use to archive all these meeting recordings. We can upload it to the city YouTube channel, which we already have. We already have a city YouTube channel. But we would organize them by assigning each board or commission a folder. So all the meetings would be contained there in the folder on our YouTube channel. And then at 6 months, the council would evaluate. Let's take a look. By the way, the cost here, the city already owns enough laptops for this. Is that correct, Mark? But we have to buy more owls. And so they're about $1,500 a piece, so they're not cheap, but, doable.
How many more?
Well, how many meetings? We would say one for each board or commission. So they'd be assigned to the liaison to have custody of that owl and then take it to each meeting.
It'd be one for now, though, so if we do the pilot.
Right. Just one for the pilot to kind of test the program. So, and then to evaluate, some suggestions for your consideration to evaluate after 6 months. How difficult was it? Is this more difficult than what we imagined? Maybe. How useful or effective? Was this process an effective way to record and archive the meetings? And then lastly, how many views? We can easily see how many people are accessing the meetings. How useful was it? And then at the end of what we would suggest is at the end of 6 months, then the council decide if we want to do this for all boards and commissions. And that's all we have. Are there any
Does that
questions?
sound like a plan, folks, or?
I think it sounds like a plan. I think I'd like the idea of how I've used them before.
Okay. Good. Have you actually run one?
Yeah. I mean, well, we haven't recorded, but it was a company meeting and there was one there, and every time someone talked, it focused on you and zoomed in, and but you could still see the whole room, so it was kind of neat. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, I recognize that. And it makes when someone joins, it makes a little
Okay.
yeah, so
That's funny.
it makes noises.
Is there any reason we have to have one per committee, or can we have one per facility that they are being held at? Would that bring the number down? Just curious.
Yeah, because the meetings don't happen like at the same time.
True.
I'm Mark Sandhills, IT Director. I speak to that piece. So I would say we have a couple of them and just put them in by hard cases for them, carry cases, so don't get damaged. I don't think we would need one for each board. Each board liaison have to have a laptop, so we have to verify that all liaisons have a laptop. I think they do today, we can verify that. But no, absolutely, we do not need one for every board and commission. The other, it's just about logistics. Maybe the library has one over there, and maybe we have one here, and that somebody grabs on their way to the meeting. It really depends. But no, to answer the question, I think 2 would probably be sufficient. One to have as a backup, just to make sure we always have one ready.
Okay, is that what you guys want to do?
I have a question, if I may. What is the overall goal or purpose in doing this? Because I look sometimes, a week or two after our study sessions and council meetings, and I always watch the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings, virtually, in the week after they've happened. And I look sometimes at how many views there are, and it's usually not a big number. Sometimes it's 50, 60, maybe for council meetings, maybe it's 100 and something, maybe 200. And I just think this is an awful lot of work, and we've got, well over 100 meetings, and it puts another burden on people that are there volunteering their time. And I know, the historical board meets there, and the sustainability meets at the fire station, too, et cetera, and we're in such an information age, and I've had a few people that I've had a discussion about this, and a couple have said, well, this is a little bit like Big Brother, and they feel it could maybe have a chilling effect on having open and, free discussions in some of these boards or commissions, and why do people want to record it? So I can see the information part, but, and a couple of people said to me, well, if someone's interested in the historical park or Parks and Rec, they can go to the meeting. So, because there is a cost involved, and even if one of the board chairmen does this, they get sick, they go on vacation, meetings are canceled because of weather, and so, but I just don't know if we'd have a whole bunch of data and videos piled up, and I just kind of question how many people would really look at them, because not that many people go to the meetings.
Michael, it could be a good tool, but will people use it? I don't know. If people are going to go on a board or go back or appointed to a board that they wanted to go back and see some back history and some things like that, I don't like you. I'm not sure how many people would watch it. I'm amazed that, we get 150, 200 people watch a council meeting, but I think that's a different issue. People talk about moving businesses here. They'll watch a council meeting to see what the chemistry of the city is and all that. But I don't know how many would do that. I don't have a problem trying it somewhere in one or two of our boards and see what if it gets interest and pay.
Well, if we want to do a pilot, I'm supportive. I'm just throwing out as a discussion, what is the kind of the end goal or
Well,
purpose?
for me, I can't be everywhere. And so if something comes up
right.
that, to understand context of how it got to us and what the conversations were behind that, it's easy to be able to log on, listen to that and go, okay, so this is what they were thinking. And,
I can see that
because we
part of
don't
it.
always
Right.
think the same. And what a boring world it would be if we did. So-
Agree.
Going back a long time ago, we used to get minutes from some of the board meetings and stuff like that, but as we condense minutes now, there's not a lot of discussion
Context.
conducted there. So I don't know, folks. We need to move along with whatever
We
it
do.
is we want to do here.
I'm in support of the pilot program as well.
So move forward with the pilot?
One concern I have with the pilot is to the fact that you're going to have, we'll pick one board. I'd kind of like to perhaps modify that, or we at least try it in a couple of boards during this particular time frame. I know the rationale that you said, so we could at least do that, but it sounds like if we're only going to use, one piece of equipment with the laptop, i.e. the OWL with the laptop, it could be a couple of more in this period. So I don't know, to me, one data point with one, as you call it, panel, it's not perhaps enough to get a sense of how that would work. Different spaces, different places.
That's true.
So, I think the idea of capturing the information is good. I do have the similar concerns that Michael has related to, is it gonna quash, conversation? That's a chilling potential effect that it could have, because it's gonna be out there. But I think it's good to have that context that Tina was referring to. I appreciate that and have used that quite a bit myself to try to thread things together.
But it is a bit concerning to hear that there are some people who have the opinion that if certain people would be in the meeting, or that they felt that what they're saying would be embedded in a video that could be watched later, that they would otherwise not say it. It's a little bit concerning.
Well, I'm just relaying information.
Yeah.
All these meetings are open to the public, so anybody from the public can attend the meeting in person. So I would expect that what we would see in a recording would be similar to what we would see if someone from the public were observing the meeting, which in reality shouldn't be any different than if no one were there observing the meeting. All of these meetings are subject to, transparency. And so my only reason for supporting the pilot would be, for the same reasons that Tina said, was that I can't be everywhere at once. And so to be able to go back and watch a video and get context and detail, she may see something that I don't see, or I may read something differently that she sees, or that Omar sees, or Michael sees, and having that available is helpful. That's all. So I would support a pilot.
Okay, you want to do a pilot of some kind? Maybe we could move it around, maybe not even do one.
I think moving it around to
I think that's a
different
good suggestion.
boards just would help.
Yeah.
would be
Instead of
helpful.
just one.
Instead of just one, right. Because we already get P and Z
Right.
is recorded.
Right.
Is
Yeah,
ZBA
P&Z's
recorded?
already recorded.
It's not, ZBA is not recorded.
Sometimes they don't even meet but once or twice a year too. But I think it would be good, as David's suggestion, to do it in a couple of the boards or commissions that meet monthly. Because as you said, some don't meet monthly.
Right.
Right, so to do the
Okay.
pilot.
We'll do it. We'll modify the pilot and move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's move on to A6 here real quick. I have one thing I'd like to throw out to you folks for a future. I would like for us to discuss the idea of us supporting or pushing DART to put a spur to the Galleria off of the Cotton Belt.
What they call the Silver Line now, I believe.
Yes.
And see if, if the council's behind it. I've talked a little bit with Joe Chow about it, Addison, he seems to be kind of supportive of that idea. And I think it would, if we could get that done, it would certainly increase our marketability of the east side of the city and help the Galleria and all that. I mean, get people down there to work and things like that. And I know it would be a long-term process, but I'd like to kind of kick that around and see if that's something we want to try to pursue and see to DART. That rail line's over there. It's partially used now. It's not fully utilized, but I just think that might be a real shot in the arm for the east side of our city to get a DART line, just a spur run down there and back out and connect into the Cotton Belt when they get that done. So if you put that on the future, appreciate that. Anybody else have anything?
Do we need to add the SRO to it as a future agenda item?
No,
Or
we'll
we
do
good
that as
with
part of the ordinance update. It's already baked in for next meeting.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Well,
So, I'd like to, let's see, it's not here, Alex, not in the room, but from a water conservation perspective, and I know Al's here, I'd like to see us ask, as the council, ask the Sustainability Committee to look into a water conservation and drought contingency plan. Our friends in Carrollton have such a document? And
Mayor, Council, Ryan Sauter, Director of Public Works, we already have both of those. We have a drought contingency plan, we have a water conservation plan.
could we publish those a little higher in the website?
Yes.
That would be helpful, because I actually went and looked for it and couldn't find it.
And they
So that's
actually,
all.
the drought contingency plan updates this next year.
Okay.
It's every 5 years that gets updated. So, but I can absolutely get those on the website.
And I think it's important that we communicate to our citizens that we have a plan and it has some recommendations, I'm sure, on maintaining their vegetation with limiting the water, et cetera. I'll be honest, I saw it on their site in their newsletter, and I went to look and I thought, well, do we have one?
We do.
And I did a query of our own site and I couldn't find it, so.
Maybe we'll hit.
So that, thank you for that. And then, Ryan, this is also for you. Could we get a bit of a update on what the street and signal improvements are? I've had a couple of asks in my community over the time frame that I've sat here related to improvements at Garden Brook and Marsh and that configuration, and we can talk about it, but I'd like to see what you guys have on your docket for work and then suggest some opportunities. I also had some ask related at the north end of Tanglewood at Marsh for a possibility of a light there. And I understand that situation is complicated because half of the intersection would be an Addison project as well. So I want to at least make sure that if those things are on the docket going forward, that we can look towards how that might be improved. So those, and that's not just, I'm not the only one. I'm sure there are other intersections that other council people have that would be interested in seeing the holistic of these are the projects that we have.
Future improvements, upcoming plans.
Correct.
You're gonna get a snapshot of that here in the upcoming weeks with my CIP updates.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then one more, I'm loaded today, and this one is one that I've had a brief conversation with Mark. Mark, I'd like to make sure that the council understands the knowledge management system that we have or we don't have at the moment. I think it goes back into the recording of our other boards and commissions. I think the idea of how did we arrive at that? How did previous councils arrive at that? I think we need to look, and now is an opportunity that we could look at some of these wholesale programs, if you will, to be able to say, I'm interested, and I'll use my own home address, 3303 Highland Meadow. What's been done with that? And what has occurred with that? And be able, and I'm not saying this is outward facing to the community. I'm saying that this is inward facing to our departments and the council. So I want to be clear of the separation there because I think it's important.
Is it more of a search, a master search engine across the queries across, kind of?
I think we need to sit down and figure that out. I think there are use cases that would all need to be tabled, and does it meet that requirement? If it's an RFP, if you will, a request for proposal, what are, trying to figure out how we could do that. And I think it's just positioning ourselves as a community. We're growing, and we need to be able to understand and I'll use Oak Brook as an example. In 1977, we did this, and it's based on a 1973 thing. And how did we get from 77 to 78 to 2023 and what's happened? And how do we build that? That's a great use case, if you will, in trying to piece all that together. So that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, anybody else? You got 7 minutes to have an executive session, eat your lunch and get downstairs.
Come back for the executive.
Mayor, I don't think we can get it that fast.